New Year's Day is supposed to be about fresh starts and optimism. But for a special breed of American, it is the official start of the Olympic Games of complaining. We are talking about people who call the police because a neighbor's party hat was too pointy, or because the sun dared to rise before their hangover wore off. Today, we are exposing 55 of the absolute dumbest, most brain-melting New Year's complaints ever recorded. These people are 100% serious, and their logic is about to leave you speechless. 1. A classic New Year's complaint involves calling the police because of midnight fireworks. One man in Ohio was furious because the noise was quote-unquote unexpected and startled his cat. He demanded officers go door to door to confiscate every firework in the neighborhood because his pet's peace was more important than a global celebration. When reminded it was New Year's Eve, he argued the city should have scheduled the show for 5 p.m. so he could be in bed by 9. 2. A mother in California returned a 3,000-piece Lego set because it was too difficult for her 8-year-old. Despite the box clearly being labeled for ages 18 and up, she felt the rating was a personal insult to her son's intelligence. She argued that the company intentionally creates toys that make children feel inadequate just to boost their corporate ego. She even demanded a written apology from the designers for ruining her child's New Year's confidence. 3. Gym owners dread January 2nd due to regulars complaining the facility is too crowded. One longtime member at a popular chain filed a formal complaint because he had to wait 5 minutes for a treadmill. He suggested the gym ban anyone who joined after Christmas until at least March, so the quote-unquote real athletes could have their space back. He was deeply offended that others were trying to improve their lives at the same time as him, calling the new faces a personal insult to his routine. 4. A couple booked a high-end New York hotel specifically for the fireworks, but things went south immediately. They filed for a full refund because they had to quote-unquote turn their heads slightly to see the display from their window. They argued that for $2,000 a night, the fireworks should have been centered perfectly in their specific window pane. They even blamed management for not coordinating with city pyrotechnicians to move the launch site by 20 feet to accommodate their specific viewing angle. 5. A father in Pennsylvania called the police on December 26th to report a fraudulent Santa at the mall. The man was furious because the Santa promised his son a real fire-breathing dragon, and the kid had a meltdown when he opened a plastic toy instead. The dad demanded the mall be held responsible for emotional damages and suggested Santa be arrested for making false contracts with a minor. Do you think parents should be allowed to sue for the broken promises of a guy in a velvet suit? 6. A woman at a luxury spa filed a formal complaint because her New Year's Day detox wrap did not instantly erase the 3 bottles of wine she drank the night before. She argued that for $300, the spa should have technology to suck the bad decisions right out of her pores. When the manager explained that biology does not work that way, she accused the staff of sabotaging her fresh start. Honestly, do people really think a seaweed wrap is a magic wand for a month-long bender? Who is the most delusional person you have ever met at a spa? 7. An outdoor concert in a cold climate sounds like a recipe for shivering, but some people are still surprised by nature. A woman in Colorado filed a complaint against organizers because it was quote-unquote too cold during the show. She argued that since she paid $50 for a ticket, the venue should have provided outdoor heaters for every single person or moved the entire city square indoors. She felt it was a safety violation that the air temperature was 30 degrees in the middle of a Colorado winter. 8. Open bar events are magnets for entitled complainers. One guest at a high-end gala spent half the night at the manager's desk, complaining that the free champagne was the wrong brand. She argued the quote-unquote cheap bubbles gave her a headache before she even finished the glass and demanded they open a private bottle of premium vintage just for her. When the manager refused, she threatened to call the Better Business Bureau for false advertising. Is it physically possible for a person to be more ungrateful than someone complaining about free alcohol? 9. On January 2nd, a man called a local veterinarian to complain that the New Year's fireworks had given his golden retriever a full-blown identity crisis. Since the loud bangs, the dog had been acting more like a cat and was refusing to fetch or even acknowledge its own name. The owner wanted the city to pay for a dog psychologist to restore his pet's masculine energy, arguing that the fireworks were a direct assault on the animal's core personality. Does your pet actually get scared of fireworks, or is this guy just projecting his own drama onto his dog? 10. Some people are genuinely baffled that businesses close on New Year's Day. A man in a small town blasted a family-owned hardware store on Facebook for not being open at 8 a.m. on January 1st. He needed a specific light bulb and felt the owners were quote-unquote lazy for taking the day off. He argued that as a business in America, they had a moral obligation to serve the public 365 days a year, ignoring the fact that the staff might want to spend time with their families. 11. A tourist in Times Square filed a grievance because the confetti distribution was allegedly unfair. This man stood in the cold for 10 hours, only for the wind to blow the paper strips away from him at midnight. He genuinely argued that organizers should have used industrial fans to ensure every person received an equal amount of festive trash. To make things even more absurd, he demanded a refund for his travel expenses since his photos did not look as magical as the brochure promised. Some people truly expect the weather to cooperate with their Instagram feed. 12. A woman in New York called a luxury hotel in London to berate them for posting New Year's photos while it was still afternoon in America. She accused the staff of being spoilers who ruined the surprise for the rest of the world. According to her logic, the entire planet should wait for the United States to catch up before acknowledging the next year. It is honestly mind-blowing that an adult could reach that age without understanding that the sun does not wait for their specific time zone to start the day. 13. On January 2nd, a man in a suburban supermarket caused a scene because the organic kale was sold out. He yelled at a teenage employee, claiming the store was sabotaging his resolution to go vegan. This guy expected the shop to anticipate his once-a-year interest in leafy greens and keep an infinite supply in the back. He ended his rant by saying that if he went back to eating cheeseburgers, the store would be legally responsible for his future medical bills. Do you think grocery stores should be held liable for our lack of willpower? 14. A family in Florida sent a scathing email to their cable provider because the live ball drop on their television was 3 seconds behind the actual clock. They realized this when they heard their neighbors cheering, while their screen still showed the 5-second mark. This slight delay supposedly robbed them of the authentic experience, leading them to demand a full month of free service. It is hard to imagine being so obsessed with digital precision that you let a 3-second lag ruin your entire night of celebrations. 15. A woman at a doctor's office for her annual checkup on January 3rd caused a massive scene when she stepped on the scale. She accused the nurse of tampering with the machine to make it read 5 pounds heavier as a way to pressure her into buying expensive weight loss supplements. She claimed it was physically impossible to gain that much weight in 1 week, despite her social media being a non-stop montage of eggnog and prime rib. Why is it so much easier for some people to believe in a global conspiracy than in the calories of a holiday cheesecake? 16. One passenger gave her Uber driver a 1-star rating on New Year's Eve because he was not wearing a party hat. She complained that his lack of festive spirit was a total buzzkill and made her feel like a regular passenger on a regular Tuesday. Her review suggested that rideshare apps should require drivers to sing festive songs or provide free champagne to maintain the party vibe. Have you ever been so entitled that you expected a stranger driving you at 3 a.m. to act like a professional clown? 17. A woman in New Jersey contacted a local bakery to complain that her New Year's Eve cake did not make her feel as happy as the advertisement suggested. The woman felt the baker used inferior ingredients that failed to spark joy, leading to a mediocre night. This frustration led her to demand a refund for the cake and the cost of the champagne she drank to compensate for the lack of sugary bliss. It is truly fascinating how some people can blame a sponge cake for their entire personality failing to thrive during a party. 18. On January 3rd, a woman at a community center demanded a refund for her membership because the scale showed no progress after her very first workout. She argued that the equipment was calibrated incorrectly because she had spent 40 minutes on a treadmill and only ate a salad. The staff was accused of trying to discourage her so they could keep her money without her actually using the facility. The logic that one day of effort equals a total body transformation is a special kind of delusional. 19. A customer at a coffee chain lost their mind on January 1st because the barista handed them a standard white cup instead of the festive holiday version. They argued the transition was too abrupt, and they were not emotionally ready for the holiday season to be over. They demanded the manager search the back room for any remaining red cups, claiming the white paper made their coffee taste like corporate sadness. This person was willing to hold up a long line over the color of a disposable container. 20. A guy at a street festival complained to the city council that there were too many police officers present. He felt that seeing uniforms made him feel like he was in a police state and ruined his ability to let loose. He essentially wanted the police to be invisible until he specifically needed them for an emergency, failing to realize that their presence was likely the only thing stopping a massive crowd from turning into a disaster. It is amazing how people complain about safety until they suddenly need it. 21. A woman in Illinois tried to file a formal complaint against her grocery store for her 10-pound weight gain over the holidays. She claimed the store's placement of peppermint bark near the checkout was nutritional entrapment. In her mind, she lacked the free will to resist the festive packaging, and therefore the store should pay for her new, larger wardrobe. It is truly impressive how some people turn a lack of self-control into a legal battle against a snack aisle. 22. Pizza delivery drivers have wild stories from New Year's Eve. One customer in Chicago called a shop 3 times in 40 minutes to scream about his order being late. When the driver finally arrived through a blizzard at 11:30 p.m., the guy refused to pay full price. He claimed the pizza was quote-unquote emotionally compromised because it didn't arrive in time for the countdown. He honestly believed his pepperoni pizza was a higher priority than the hundreds of other orders on the busiest night for delivery. 23. Every year, ride-sharing apps get flooded with angry messages about surge pricing at 2 a.m. One guy in Los Angeles went on a tirade because his ride cost 4 times the normal rate. He claimed the app was discriminating against him and demanded a refund because he didn't read the giant price alert before clicking confirm. He felt that as a loyal customer, he should be exempt from the basic laws of supply and demand during the busiest hour of the year. Do you think surge pricing is a fair tax on the intoxicated? 24. A diner in Texas called a restaurant on New Year's Day to complain that his holiday steak tasted too much like regular beef. He was livid that his expensive meal lacked a specific, magical holiday flavor. When the manager asked what he expected, the man replied that for $100, the meat should have tasted like a mix of joy and winter wonder. He honestly felt cheated because culinary science did not transform a cow into a spiritual experience just because the date changed. 25. A man in Miami filed a complaint with building management because his neighbor's New Year's resolution was too loud. The neighbor had started a daily chanting routine at 6 a.m. on January 1st. The complainant argued that the aggressive piece coming through the wall was vibrating his coffee table and mocking his decision to sleep until noon. He demanded the building implement quiet hours for anyone attempting to better themselves before 10 a.m. 26. An upscale HOA member sent a formal protest because a neighbor's inflatable snowman had deflated on New Year's morning. She described the pile of fabric as a quote-unquote visual tragedy that resembled a crime scene in a winter wonderland. She was so offended by the sight of a sad, flat Frosty that she wanted the neighbor fined for emotional negligence and ruining the neighborhood's aesthetic. Is it possible to be so obsessed with curb appeal that you completely lose your grip on reality? 27. A woman in Georgia tried to return a treadmill on January 3rd because it did not motivate her. She told the manager she had stood near the machine for 3 days and still did not feel the urge to run. She claimed the equipment was defective because it failed to project an aura of inspiration that would force her to move. Since the marketing showed people smiling while running, and she was still frowning, She considered it a clear case of false advertising. 28. During a New Year's Day brunch, a customer complained that her bottomless mimosas were too orange. She argued that the high juice ratio was a direct attack on her holiday spirit and demanded a refund for the entire table. When the manager pointed out she had already finished 5 glasses, she claimed she was merely conducting a thorough quality control investigation. Some people treat a brunch menu like a legal document and a server like a witness in a high-stakes trial. 29. A woman in Oregon filed a complaint against the city council because the New Year's fireworks were too sparkly. She claimed the bright flashes were confusing her indoor plants and causing her ferns to experience light-based trauma. She suggested that in the future, the city should use low-intensity glow sticks or a synchronized flashlight show to avoid upsetting the local flora. Why does it feel like some people spend their lives searching for the most obscure thing to be offended by? 30. An employee in Seattle tried to file a grievance against his company for ending the holiday break on January 2nd. He argued that the transition from a week of Netflix to a Monday morning meeting was quote-unquote psychological whiplash. He suggested the company provide a 3-day decompression period where employees are paid to sit in a dimly lit room and discuss their feelings. Have we reached a point where being asked to do your job is considered an act of aggression? 31. A guy in Arizona demanded a refund from his local juice bar because his 3-day New Year cleanse did not result in a 6-pack by January 4th. He argued that the marketing, which promised a brand new version of himself, was a binding legal contract and the lack of visible abdominal muscles was a total breach of agreement. Instead of realizing that 72 hours of kale juice cannot undo 3 decades of donuts, he threatened to picket the store until they paid for his private personal trainer. 32. One very confused woman called a travel agency to lodge a formal complaint against the entire state of Vermont. She had booked a New Year's getaway specifically for the snow, but when a sudden warm front turned the landscape into a muddy mess, she expected the tourism board to compensate her for the lack of aesthetic. This person genuinely believed that since she paid for a winter experience, the local government should have had snow machines running across every single mountain range to keep her photos looking festive. 33. A mother in New Jersey contacted a major toy retailer to complain about a massive drum kit her brother gave her son for New Year's. She did not want a refund for a defect. She wanted the store to ban her brother from making any future purchases. The woman argued that selling such a loud instrument during the most hungover week of the year was a form of psychological warfare against parents everywhere. Is there a more passive-aggressive way to ruin a sibling's life than giving their child a percussion instrument? 34. There is always that one person who takes holiday etiquette way too seriously. A woman in a boutique shop actually screamed at a cashier for saying Happy New Year on January 5th. She claimed that the window for that greeting officially closed at midnight on the 2nd, and that hearing it 3 days late was a cruel reminder of her passing youth and mortality. She demanded to speak to a manager to ensure the staff received proper training on the calendar-based expiration of polite greetings. 35. A viewer of the Rose Parade was so offended by the amount of flowers on the floats that they wrote a formal letter to the organizers. This person complained that the heavy scent was probably causing a mass allergic reaction for people watching on television and that the show was not inclusive of those with hay fever. They suggested that next year, the floats should be made of recycled plastic or realistic-looking cardboard to ensure no one's sinuses are offended from 3,000 miles away. 36. The morning of January 1st is usually quiet, unless you live next to a neighborhood lawn warden. One homeowner received a knock on his door at 7 a.m. from a neighbor complaining about a stray piece of tinsel on his grass. The neighbor claimed the tinsel was an eyesore lowering property values and demanded it be picked up immediately. Never mind that it was a holiday and everyone else was asleep. This person felt a tiny strip of plastic was a neighborhood emergency that simply could not wait until noon. 37. A lady in South Carolina tried to sue a local grocery store because her New Year's Day meal of collard greens and black-eyed peas failed to bring her a lottery win. She argued that the tradition is marketed as bringing good luck and wealth, and since she did not win the Powerball on January 2nd, the ingredients were clearly defective. She honestly expected a judge to rule that the grocery store was legally responsible for the failure of a centuries-old folk superstition and a cheap bag of beans. 38. A guest at a high-end party tried to get the DJ fired for playing Auld Lang Syne. He claimed the lyrics were too depressing and were triggering a midlife crisis he was not prepared for at 12:05 a.m. The music needed to be switched to upbeat techno immediately to drown out his existential dread, or so he claimed. The manager had to explain that a century-old tradition was not a personal attack on his youth, but the man refused to calm down until he was escorted out by security. 39. One disgruntled homeowner in a quiet cul-de-sac filed an anonymous complaint with the local police because his neighbor still had a wreath on their front door on January 2nd. He argued that since the holidays were over, the wreath was now a fire hazard and a beacon for unwanted spirits. This individual actually stayed awake until 3 a.m. to see if the neighbor would take it down, and when they did not, he called the authorities to report a disturbance of the visual peace. 40. A man in a high-end electronics store tried to return a brand new television on January 1st because the year on the setup screen said 2024 instead of 2025. He was so convinced that he had been sold a used or outdated model that he refused to listen to the employee explaining that the new year had only just begun. He walked out of the store, convinced that the entire staff was part of a secret plot to sell him last year's technology at full price just because he was shopping while tired. 41. A makeup artist in Los Angeles had a client try to sue for emotional distress on January 2nd. This woman claimed the glitter used for her New Year's look was so sparkly it caused a glare, making her look like a supernatural entity in professional photos. She argued the artist should have predicted the camera flash reaction and demanded a full refund plus a new photo shoot. It is impressive how people blame a bottle of shimmer for their own bad angles and poor lighting. 42. A new gym member in Texas filed a complaint because the swimming pool was too cold for his new lifestyle. He argued that as a person committed to a total life transformation, the facility should have raised the temperature to match his burning passion for fitness. When staff explained the pool was set to a standard athletic temperature, he accused them of trying to shock his system into a heart attack to avoid honoring his membership. Would you quit the gym just because the water was 3 degrees off? 43. An angry office worker in Chicago sent an HR complaint because New Year's Day fell on a Wednesday. He argued the midweek holiday was corporate torture that broke his concentration and forced him to endure 2 separate Monday-style mornings in 1 week. He suggested the company should have moved the holiday to a Friday to ensure his personal flow was not disturbed. This man honestly expected his employer to negotiate with the Gregorian calendar to accommodate his preference for long weekends. 44. A woman at a bakery on January 2nd had a meltdown because they switched back to regular cupcakes instead of champagne-flavored ones. She screamed at the manager that she was not emotionally prepared for the holiday season to end and that the lack of edible gold stars was a direct assault on her mental health. This customer felt the bakery had a social responsibility to keep the party atmosphere going until mid-February. Imagine being so fragile that the absence of a glittery cupcake causes a public scene. 45. Every year, people take to social media to roast the hosts of televised New Year's specials. One viewer was so upset by a host's sparkly jacket that they called the network's comment line to complain. They claimed the jacket was too bright and gave their dog a seizure, though they had zero medical proof. They demanded the host apologize on air and promise to wear matte colors the following year. Why do we even watch these televised countdowns if everyone hates the hosts and their outfits every single year? 46. A homeowner in Seattle filed a noise complaint against a neighbor on January 3rd for saying Happy New Year too loudly in the driveway. He argued that since it was 72 hours past the event, any enthusiastic celebration was a disturbance of the peace. He felt the window for joy had officially closed, and the neighbor's upbeat attitude was a personal insult to his post-holiday depression. This is the kind of person who makes you want to keep your holiday lights up until July just to spite them. 47. Diners at a trendy brunch spot on January 1st demanded their bill be wiped clean because the restaurant lacked a hangover recovery menu. They argued the chef should have anticipated their suffering and provided complimentary oxygen shots and grease-heavy comfort food. When the manager pointed out they ordered salads and iced tea, they claimed the lack of heavy options was a safety violation. Does a restaurant have a moral duty to provide grease-filled comfort food the morning after a national party? 48. A disgruntled neighbor in Arizona reported a family to the HOA because their New Year's resolution banner used the wrong font. The family hung a sign in their window, but the neighbor argued the serif font was too aggressive and ruined the street's modern aesthetic. She claimed looking at the sign gave her a headache, and that community guidelines should apply to personal motivational quotes. Some people have so little drama in their lives, they have to invent a war over a font style. 49. A mother in Virginia returned a chemistry set because it was too educational. She told the store clerk her son wanted to be a famous YouTuber, not a scientist, and the gift was a threat to his creative spirit. She felt the person who bought it was trying to force her child into a boring career path and demanded the store ban any gifts requiring more than 10 minutes of reading. The level of pride some people take in avoiding knowledge is truly a sight to behold. 50. A man tried to return a sofa on January 1st because it did not feel like a fresh start. He purchased the couch in December but claimed that at midnight, the fabric began to emit an old year energy, clashing with his new year vibrations. He genuinely expected the store to exchange it for a model manufactured specifically in the new year to ensure he was not bringing past baggage into his living room. How do you even explain that to a delivery driver without feeling ridiculous? 51. A man in Ohio tried to return a fitness tracker on January 5th because it kept telling him to move. He argued that the device was being judgmental and creating a hostile environment in his own home. According to his formal complaint, a New Year's resolution should be about feeling good, not about a piece of plastic on his wrist shaming him for sitting on the couch. He demanded a full refund plus a formal apology from the manufacturer for the emotional trauma caused by a vibrating step counter. 52. One resident in a gated community in South Carolina reported her neighbor to the HOA because their holiday lights were still on at 6 a.m. on January 2nd. She argued that the sparkle was now an illegal distraction and that the neighbor was clearly trying to extend the season just to make her feel guilty for taking her own tree down. This woman actually sent photos to the local fire marshal, claiming the leftover tinsel was a hazard to the structural integrity of the entire neighborhood. Why is there always one person who treats the HOA rules like they are the 10 Commandments? 53. During a rainy New Year's Eve in Seattle, a woman filed a claim against the city for the cost of her expensive silk dress. She argued that since the city organized the outdoor event, they were responsible for the weather and should have provided a giant canopy over the entire public square. Since the moisture ruined her outfit, she felt taxpayers owed her $400 for her own lack of foresight. Why do some people genuinely believe the local government has a remote control for the clouds? 54. A guy at a luxury car dealership tried to return his lease on January 2nd because the car's digital clock did not automatically update the year. He was convinced the vehicle was haunted by the ghost of the previous year and that this was a bad omen for his business ventures. Even after a salesman showed him how to change the settings in 5 seconds, the man insisted on an exchange for a different color to reset his spiritual energy. Some people have more money than sense, and it really shows on the first of the year. 55. Finally, we have the person who complained to the city of Chicago because the wind was blowing from the north on January 1st, which they interpreted as a bad omen for the local economy. They demanded the mayor's office release a statement apologizing for the poor atmospheric conditions and promising a more southern breeze for the rest of the week. This individual genuinely believed the city government had a remote control for the jet stream. Honestly, if you were the mayor, would you even bother replying to a person who thinks you control the weather? 55 stories of pure entitlement prove that for some, a new year is just another excuse to be miserable. From suing over a cold pool to reporting a neighbor for a font choice, these people are truly in a league of their own. Tell us in the comments, what is the absolute dumbest New Year's complaint you have ever heard? I want to hear your wildest stories from the front lines of holiday absurdity. Hit the like button and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.